My name's Kyle, and you caught me halfway through packing up my tent after having what I would consider a good night's sleep. Now, I wasn't actually expecting it to be a good night's sleep. I didn't expect to feel this good this morning because I've been out on this gold mining trip. This is day 3, second night. And after that first night's sleep, I've been feeling kind of like garbage all day yesterday. And I was sweaty and my skin was kind of sticky and there was just a swarm of mosquitoes, so I didn't have an opportunity to have a proper river swim to prepare for bed. And yet, this morning, I feel pretty good. And I'm gonna put it right down to sleep apnea. I've had sleep apnea for about the last 5-ish years. It's pretty minor to the point where usually when I'm out on these camping trips, I just assume, well, I'll use a little nose strip or I'll sleep on my side, and it's not really going to be an issue for me. However, I've always noticed that after a 3-4 day gold mining trip, I'm just wrecked when I get home. And as soon as I sleep in my own bed at home, and I attribute it partially to having a shower and to not being outside all day, I feel much better. But after sleeping last night with my CPAP machine functioning, I think I need to bring this out mining more often. So I'm gonna take you back to my boat over there and I'll show you the setup that I use when I'm out camping. Everything that I need for good night's sleep is in this box. Now this is a larger setup than you would use one of these if you were like backpacking or something, but it works for what I've got going on in the boat here. To start things out, cotton t-shirt and my pajama pants. I just store them here so it's, one less trip and thing to think about. Full-size pillow from home, completely unnecessary, but since it fits in the box, why not? And then of course, I have this. I have no idea how to pronounce this. I'm gonna say that it's a AFERY power bank. I'm going to do a little bit more detailed review on this thing later. It's way more capable than you actually need to run your CPAP machine. Of course, for people in the CPAP using community, you'll recognize this thing. It's pretty easy to see, and I'm using the nasal pillows as far as the way that it gets that pressure into my lungs. Right here, this ResMed 90 watt 12 volt inverter. I'm just going to bring the camera over here and give you guys a closer rundown of sort of the electronics component of this. Here's the setup. Right now I'm using this AFERY power bank, power station, I guess. So this thing's pretty awesome. It is way more capability than you actually need to run a CPAP. I'll go into more details on it in a future video. But right now I want to focus on the actual CPAP itself. Now, this is a ResMed AirSense 10. This is a very common CPAP, whether it's the 9 or the 11 or whatever it is. They're all very, very similar. Now, this guy has a humidifier on the side and a climate controlled hose. This is just where a cat was nibbling on my hose, so I've got some tape to seal up that gap there. But where a lot of the energy comes from is actually heating a little hot plate in your humidifier to help get that humidity into the air. They warm the water up, and to actually heat this hose up, which is necessary with the humidifier because it keeps it from having condensation build up in the tube. And I'll explain why that really ruined my first night of sleep and how you can avoid that. So this guy right here has a 110 wall outlet on the side here. You can see, you just pull this up. You can plug directly into the wall with exactly the existing power inverter that you already have that normally plugs into the wall. This is a ResMed 90 watt DC converter. You can go to the website, pick one of these up. Basically what this does is it just takes 12 volt DC and it brings it up to the voltage that this machine uses, which I believe is 24 volts. The other version takes your wall power, which is 110, and then drops it down to the voltage you need here. So this is a battery. So it takes it from the battery, moves it up to wall voltage, moves it back down to this voltage. It's less efficient running it off the inverter. running it off this converter is much more efficient. So you can use this many more nights if you run it this way. With that setup, you come on over here, and if we can show you the screen, you go to my options, you've got your climate control on manual, and then tube temperature and humidity level. You want both of these to be off. So you just click, you can dial this up or down. So tube temp is off and humidity is off. Humidity runs a hot plate under here, draws a lot of power. We don't really need to be doing that out here. You can if you want, but you're just gonna get like one night's sleep if you have this thing running, you know, full on. Back here, you've got your climate controlled tube. So there's a little wire that runs through here and actually warms this tube up, and that's necessary when you have the humidifier running to prevent condensation from building up in the line. So what happened on night 1 for me is I decided, well, I'm gonna cheat the system. I put my distilled water in the humidifier, but I turned the humidifier off and I had the tube off. Excuse me. So what happened was, even without the hot plate heating this up, some humidity was getting into the air, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. But you don't need humidity. Like if it's winter, it's really cold, and you're at your high altitude house in Calgary, you know, it's a comfort. But when you're out camping, you don't really need it. And what was happening was all that humidity was building up in this hose, and this part here that sort of presses up against your nose, there's a little screen at the back here. So that screen is supposed to bleed air out on both sides here. So water had built up on that screen, and because there was water droplets all covering that screen, there was no way for the air to then leak back out into the atmosphere. So I was basically breathing in and out through this whole tube and just breathing my own air over and over again, reducing the oxygen content, increasing CO2, and I'd wake up feeling like I wasn't getting any air. And it was because of all that humidity building up here, and the whole tube had like water droplets inside of it. It was a whole mess. I didn't sleep very well that night. So the next night, I emptied the humidifier completely. I turned on the climate controlled tube just for about 20 minutes to dry out all the water droplets that were still inside from the night before. And then I turned everything off, and it just worked well. I slept great. And that's my little learning experience, is if you're not going to run the power to keep that condensation out of this tube, you may run into an issue with the way these masks are set up, where water's plugging that sort of air bleed hole, and you're not going to sleep too well. So no water in the machine, no humidifier setting, and no climate control tube. This thing with my settings, which are very low, I was burning, when I was breathing in, it was about 8 watts. And when I was breathing out, it was like 3 or 4 watts. So based on sort of what the machine was telling me, I would get 5 to 6 nights of sleep if I never charged this off a solar panel, which is one of the cool features. You can charge this off solar panels up to 200 watts. So I've got a little folding 60 watt panel, and just with the output of that thing, I can essentially be out here indefinitely. Plus I can charge, you know, the phone that I'm filming with. There's a whole thing here, right? So you've got a light, you've got their AC power on this side, which is 800 watts. It's way more capable than you would need for this. I can actually run a blender, you can run a toaster. I've run a 1400 watt kettle, even though this is only rated for 800 watts. It puts out 800 watts to the 1400 watt kettle, so it boils slower, but somehow they've got some electronic wizardry in here to make that work. Of course, you've got your 12 volt outlets here, 100 watt power delivery. So USB-C to USB-C in my laptop. I can actually charge my laptop quite quickly right off this machine. A couple other charging ports and USB. The screen, which is going to be hard to read, sort of, you know, it's right out in the sun. But it sort of lets you know how many hours are left based on your current usage. Currently shows 68% capacity in the battery, and that's after 2 nights, my bad night and my good night. So the AFERY, about 500 watt hour power bank. Very cool unit. It's actually one of my favorites so far. But yeah, I'm going to do a little bit more detailed review of that in a future video. Thanks to AFERY for providing that to my channel so that I can show you my CPAP setup. Hope that was helpful. I hope that maybe saves somebody a bad night's sleep if you're heading out for the first time. And yeah, get out, enjoy nature. Don't let something like this hold you back. Until next time, cheers, and thank you for watching, everyone.